We're here to talk about quantum. You say, well, Bill, I've heard a little bit about quantum. You're a litigator, not a quantum scientist. Why are you doing this? I think the answer is because I ask questions, right? And things are changing rapidly, and we should all have questions about it. Matt and Paul are really people who are two leaders in this field. Paul joins us, is one of my partners, but joins us from Washington, D.C. today. Paul has been very involved in quantum, the quantum initiative, has lobbied and testified and worked with people on Capitol Hill as we're trying to develop smart regulations that will help the industry to develop, help companies to use this kind of technology, and frankly, to help America stay in a pole position so that we are able to have important national security implications of this new technology protected, right? Paul, you talk to other people about it. Talk to us a little bit about it. Tell us what is quantum and why should we care?
Well, thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Thank you for the hospitality. Welcome, everybody. So quantum as a whole encompasses a number of different and somewhat related technologies. Quantum computing is the one you've most heard about. Quantum networking, which we'll also be talking about and have some guests who can share more about. Quantum sensors and clocks, which help you figure out where and when you are in the universe. And then quantum cryptography, which is a really significant development in both code breaking and code making. And quantum technologies in general rely on the unique and really bizarre properties that take place at the subatomic level, at the quantum level. And there are two that are most important from our perspective at the moment. And one is the idea of superposition. And I'll explain that for a second. Superposition is when you have an ordinary computer bit. It's either on or it's off. It's either 1 or it's 0, and it's never anything in between. But a quantum bit or qubit can exist in a state of superposition. And that means it can be thought of as being both 1 and 0 and everything in between all at once. And you say, well, how on earth is that possible? Imagine you're flipping a coin. And while the coin is in the air, it's spinning, and it could lead to heads, it could lead to tails, and at any given point, there's a probability that it will be one or the other. That's something between, but you can't really say anything meaningful about what the state of the coin is, except that it will resolve into either 0 or 1 when you catch it and look at it. So that's what a quantum bit is essentially. It's that coin that's spinning until you look at it. And that's tremendously powerful, and I'll explain why in a minute. The second aspect of quantum that is interesting is called entanglement. And that's where you can have 2 or more quantum bits that are related in such a way that they function as essentially the same thing. And there are some limitations to this analogy, but I have 2 kids, both boys. And one of them always wears matching socks, and the other never wears matching socks, which is really annoying for a parent. And the thing is, if I see one of the boys and one of the socks, then I immediately know something about the other sock. If it's my boy who's always got matching socks, I know exactly what the other sock is. If it's the boy who never has matching socks, I only know exactly what the other sock is not. Right? He could be wearing a green sock and any other color on the other foot. I just know it's not green. And that's limited information, but somewhat useful. If it's the other kid, I know it's also going to be a green sock. I have more specificity. And you can do things with that information. Now, the crazy thing is, if I had my boys pick out their socks, and I kept one sock here, and I sent the other sock anywhere else in the universe but without looking at either sock, as soon as I look at that one sock that I have, I know exactly what is going on with the other sock, or at least somewhat what's going on with the other sock. And that's an interesting capability. And it's more complicated than that at the quantum level. That particular phenomenon basically broke Einstein's brain. He called it spooky action at a distance. He didn't like it. But when you combine those two things, and here's the rub, when you combine those two things, you get among other things, you can get a quantum computer. And a quantum computer is not like a normal computer. Don't even think of it like a normal computer. A quantum computer is a computer that gets more powerful. It doubles in capability with every new bit that you add. Now, it's very hard to do that additional bit, but every single time it's like you've got twice as powerful a computer. And before long, that's an incredibly powerful computer indeed. And we'll talk about what some of the implications of that are. But it takes it totally out of the realm of things like Moore's Law and anything else that applies to traditional computer, and begins to unlock a series of capabilities, a series of questions you can answer that are just not possible otherwise.
Well, Matt, for those here in Palm Beach who don't always wear socks to work, let's talk about the implications of this sort of beyond the science, right? It's clearly a topic that's all about science and physics and other properties that are important in the development of the special quantum computers. But your own background in technology, your work in venture capital, the effort you now have seen, just as Flagler came down to this area and saw a brand new opportunity, in some ways, you and your team at Quantum Coast Capital are seeing this area as an opportunity that is ripe for this sort of capture of the future, so to speak. How do you take what Paul was talking about in the science and put it to use in industry?
Well, I think in venture capital, it's an interesting time because everyone's really fixated on AI. It's the shiny object. It's what everyone focuses on. Yet quantum is one of those very sort of distant things. I mean, even as you're trying to explain it, I've spoken to several physicists over the last couple of years, and even they can't fully explain how it works. I mean, they flat out say, we just don't know how it works. It just does. And the interesting thing about that as an investor is it's really hard to tell people, hey, we're going to take your money and give it to a company that we're not sure if they're actually able to do the thing that they're saying they're going to be able to do. The great time that we're in right now in terms of the window is that the people that are doing anything in quantum have been doing it for a long time. So they're true experts. We're also at a time period, we had an announcement this week, we saw in the news that Google created a new computer that had 105 qubits. And the fact of that matter is we're now entering that realm of personalized medicine. So we're able to build computations so quickly that it would take, I think it was 10 septillion years in order to calculate something that they can calculate in 5 minutes on a quantum computer. So when you start to think as an investor, there's this window of being able to go in and invest in these early stage companies that are creating enormous breakthroughs in personalized medicine, in logistics, in encryption. There's a couple other areas, and then you start to think about, so that's one side of it. Then you have quantum sensors, which is another realm of quantum, which is really incredible, and you'll hear from somebody on a panel next about more into quantum sensors. I can't really totally do it justice, but and then on the hardware side, I would say a lot of that has already been invested. So we've seen the Googles of the world, the Microsofts of the world, the Amazons of the world go in and put billions and billions of dollars into the hardware. The key thing that I would stress is we're now in a different time period than we have been in previous technological revolutions, where I can be here in beautiful sunny South Florida and have access to the world's leading quantum computer through a company like Microsoft. They're putting quantum computers, several systems on the cloud, and I could be anywhere to be able to process my data. The other thing that I would stress is other countries, right? Potentially our enemies. So the country that comes up with the quantum supremacy essentially wins, right? It's going to be very hard to catch up to other countries if they get there first. So it's really important for the U.S. to work with a lot of allies, a lot of other countries that we're very close with in order to achieve quantum supremacy together.
What are some of the things in order to accomplish this that you need to support those businesses that are really trying to do this? You need capital for one, right? But I'm sure you need specialized skills, you need additional kinds of resources, you need a regulatory environment, perhaps one that they're crafting just out the window over at Mar-a-Lago right now in a new administration. Paul or Matt, either one of you, how would you speak to some of those things that you're looking for? I guess, Paul, first on a sort of national regulatory, national security standpoint, and then Matt, maybe at the local level. Our community here in West Palm Beach is certainly doing a lot of things to really be supportive of growing energy and new companies. So Paul, talk about the broader perspective of that.
Yeah, well, thank you. And in 2017, I founded the Quantum Industry Coalition, which is a group of U.S. companies, the leaders in quantum for the most part, who wanted to have that voice in Washington, D.C. to press forward on this. We helped pass the National Quantum Initiative Act in 2018, which sort of brought together the U.S. civilian agencies for quantum research and development. We're in the middle of reauthorizing that now to take into account the tremendous progress we've made so far. So the first thing I would say is we need federal investment in research and development to continue. But a much better thing at this stage is for the government to start being a customer of these companies and say, okay, we're done doing. We've done plenty of research on quantum computing. Now we want to do our work with quantum computers, and we want to use quantum computers to advance our mission in ways that we haven't been able to before. So that's part of what the new National Quantum Initiative reauthorization is going to do. From a regulatory perspective, a lot of that has to do with export controls, and we'll have folks who are going to talk about that coming up. But there's a real opportunity for the U.S. to provide that sort of demand signal to the market as a customer that will really unlock a lot. And Matt, do you want to carry it?
Yeah, I would say one of the bigger things too is the U.S. is largely underspending compared to other countries or other areas of the world. But I feel like through that American ingenuity, we will underspend but overdeliver. We have the ecosystem built already in the U.S. for startups, right? We have Silicon Valley, so many companies that are globally recognized have come out of different regions of the U.S. The other thing that I would stress is if I was to sit here today and talk about the internet 50 years ago, right? And trying to explain it to this group of people, I think you guys would all be kind of scratching your heads like, wait, you're going to be able to do what with what? And you're going to be able to communicate with people all over the world? How? But then when you start to think about it today, it's like, well, how would we live without the internet? And when I look at quantum, it's that next paradigm shift. It is the next industrial revolution. And when I look at companies that are putting out reports, there's a very well-known one that comes out that says, quantum will be worth $1 trillion by 2030. It's almost like, how can you put a dollar amount on what the internet is worth today? It's almost impossible because it touches so many different points. And going down to that local level, you have, here in West Palm Beach, the Business Development Board, they want to support initiatives like this. They want to support capital coming into our community and working with local community leaders to really kind of harness that. So we're bringing jobs into the area. We're bringing, research into the area. We're bringing schools into the area. So this is all really amazing stuff for our community. And if we're starting to look at quantum now, it's only inevitable that it's going to impact all of our lives at some point. So if we're really early stage on it, I grew up in Boca Raton. PC was invented in Boca Raton by IBM. So the community there already had this sense of entrepreneurialism and sort of doing audacious goals to put this computer system on somebody's desk instead of in a huge mainframe area. And again, it kind of goes back to that parallel that I talked about before, where we're going to be able to achieve really amazing things because of these computers being on the cloud.
And I think your point about the PC in Boca, going back to my point about Flagler coming down here, it's an area where people are supportive of big ideas, right? It really is. You call it the quantum coast, and I think that's probably right as I look out on it. Are there some industries, Paul, that you think are probably more sort of initially receptive to it, or would be better candidates for a big breakthrough by using quantum?
Absolutely. So quantum computing is at its best when there are problems that get incredibly complex when you add variables. So when every new piece of information interacts with all the other pieces of information, that's where quantum computing works really well. So when you look at something like, you talked a little bit about drug discovery. As you're trying to figure out how a molecule will behave, the most complex molecule we can currently simulate accurately has, I think, 6 atoms. That's tiny. and it points to just how challenging it is to take into account all of the different variables in the atomic states that interact with each other. Modern pharmaceuticals have hundreds of atoms in a molecule, and that's just an absolutely impossible task to simulate. So we have to do huge drug trials, and it's extraordinarily expensive and takes forever. Imagine being able to take that inside a computer. That's the kind of thing that we can do. So you look at whether it's pharmaceuticals, chemistry, logistics. Imagine being able to reroute aircraft on the fly and being able to to not have the cascading delays across the country when there's a storm somewhere. All sorts of highly challenging, very complex systems. Those are where the breakthroughs are going to first matter, and those are the companies in those spaces that are already working with quantum companies.
And I'm gonna add one more element to that. So on those 2 points, right, we have pharmaceuticals. So we have an aging population in Florida. So how does this impact an aging population? So if I was to tell you today we're going to start investing in research, or we're going to invest in companies that are building something that maybe in 10 years from now will be widely used, and it also starts at the policy level too in DC. So we have to have these conversations now, so that if I have a drug discovery for something in 5 years or 10 years from now, people aren't coming out with pitchforks and saying, this is witchcraft, and they want nothing to do with it. We've already started the discussion today. We know that it's going to be a long road to get there, but in order to have these conversations now, it's absolutely important. The other aspect is logistics, right? You kind of touched on that a little bit. It's not just flight traffic and making sure that I get, from here to my vacation on time. And although that's important and great, look at the national security angle of things, right? You look at different wars being won because you're able to get, things from point A to point B very quickly or very efficiently. And that's absolutely important when it comes to national security. And so if we're able to figure out these computations that would typically take days or weeks or months, and cut it down into seconds or fractions of seconds, that's when we really start to have a huge paradigm shift there.
Well, those things all sound like game changers that perhaps we don't even know which industries are going to be most receptive to it until we get the technology even a little further along. Because I'm sure, just as with personal computers and computers, there were things that we developed that wouldn't have been thought of in Boca in the 70s, right?
There's always people that say it can't get done, right? But when you have a community of people that say, we're supporting this and we believe that it can get done, it will.
Right. Yeah, great. So let me ask you this. If you were talking to somebody who wanted to go into this field, right? Somebody who wanted to start a company like this, or somebody who wanted to study it at a university, what would you tell them? What advice would you give as we wrap up before we head to the next panel?
Yeah, I'd say hire early and often. The biggest challenge is there's a tremendous crunch of people We need a lot more people than we have who are qualified quantum experts of one kind or another. I'd also say right now this is an excellent opportunity to get involved because we're moving to the applications. We're moving away from everybody having to have a PhD in some quantum related science, and more toward, okay, I can build something on this platform that will actually be useful to people.
Yeah, we're looking at we've been talking to a coding school and seeing how we could bring, to start summer programs here to West Palm Beach, and working with middle school kids on exciting them about coding and learning more about quantum. Again, you don't have to be a quantum physicist in order to get into quantum. So there's a lot of different jobs that can be created. The other thing that I would stress, as he pointed out, like when we look at investing in quantum, we're looking at it as the ecosystem. So you're always going to have winners and losers. That's inevitable, right? But if company A goes out of business, you now have a workforce of people that you're going to be able to bring into company B or C or D. And that's what's really important about this time period right now, is being able to go out there, train people, get people working in it. And again, it's not something that you have to be, in a PhD program your whole life in order to then get into quantum. There's a lot of other areas where, Microsoft has been doing a really great job at pairing their coding platform with like ChatGPT, for instance. So if I want to create a quantum circuit, I can go on and say, hey, I would like to do blah, 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 and it kind of creates the code for that. So, starting early, getting curious, diving into it. And the other thing that I can't stress enough with quantum, which has been so incredible, is you almost have to take all of your knowledge of classical computing and what we can do and throw it out the window and just have these blue sky thoughts and go after it, because it's now at a time period where you can really achieve audacious goals using the compute power that we're about to have.
Because the tools are vastly different, right? I mean, the classical computer is I saying to you earlier, Paul, it's like a saw and a hammer. They're both very useful, but they're useful for different things, right? And so I think, to your point, our community and those of us in this room and listening, on the webinar, the opportunity is really now to get involved in this, to learn more about it, to be supportive of policy changes that help us as a country to take a national security lead, to work with partners, as you talked about, and allies that are similarly aligned on these issues. But thank you for bringing it to us today, talking to us about it, having this vision for the Quantum Coast, because I think that's really a great opportunity with the political leadership we have here that's supportive of those sorts of things, and the entrepreneurial base that's joined, and the policymakers right across the water that I'm looking out the window at right now.
Pat, you had mentioned earlier that you were involved in VC. How large is the investable universe currently, and where do you expect it to be, say, 5, 10 years?
So the question was, how large is the VC space for the quantum universe, essentially? It's very small right now. There's only about 5 funds really specifically focused on just quantum alone globally. It's kind of, as I mentioned before, the shiny object is AI. And there's not a lot of people that have a real big understanding of even what quantum is, right? A lot of people in this room haven't really heard about quantum until they got invited to this event today. So the big thing that I would stress is it can't just be us or a couple of these others that are out there in terms of the VC space. There has to be more. And I was talking to a VC yesterday that's probably the largest in the space. And we're going to be working together closely on really accelerating this market and really kind of expanding on the ecosystem for quantum, because we both believe in where it's going. We kind of have these indicators. We're looking at the signals, especially for me. I've been looking at these signals sort of arriving over the last 5 years, and they're now sort of really sort of focused on how often we're seeing the signals, right? It's daily, if not hourly now, where 5 years ago it was maybe quarterly that we would see big signals. So there needs to be more venture coming into the space. More people need to do it. But as Paul also mentioned, governments really need to step up, and there needs to be a lot of patient capital coming into this space that knows that it's not going to be your typical venture cycle of 2 years or 3 years, and you're seeing massive exits and unicorns being built. There might be a few of those, but I think we're really looking at sort of a longer time horizon than traditional venture.
Hey.
Yep.
Thank you for the presentation, very informative. Matt, as you and I have discussed, this city has evolved to where it's the epicenter of the state of Florida, in large part due to our mayor, Keith James, who's here, who's turned it into Wall Street South. When we look at quantum computing and analyzing the opportunity for this area to be a hub, what are some of the attractions or factors that make a geographic area conducive so that we can start thinking about sort of the foundation we need to start laying in order to be attractive for a quantum company to even consider West Palm Beach?
Well, I mean, the fact that it's winter and it's beautiful outside is probably the first. So the question was, for everyone online that couldn't hear it, what can we do as a city in West Palm Beach to attract quantum companies to this area or to evolve their businesses? And I think that, again, the groundwork is companies like us, candidly, not to sort of say that too much, but it's also leaders in the community that have to support this and want to sort of engage more with these companies as they're coming in. I think that's very important, and your group is doing a really great job at that at the Business Development Board. I would say that candidly, it's creating a holistic ecosystem for this, right? It's not going to be Silicon Valley anymore. It could be anywhere in the world where these things can stand up. And companies like Microsoft or Google or Amazon that are putting quantum systems on the cloud, having incredibly fast internet in the area. We have the Lambda Rail, which is something that's going to very much so support a lot of the research side and also connect universities, right? If we start talking to universities in the local area or even in the state, and being able to have them all connected on the Lambda Rail, what it would, for people that might not know. So Lambda Rail is a dark fiber for the state of Florida, and it connects research institutions, it connects universities, and it connects NASA. And it's a free access fiber for all of these different institutions to be able to work together. So if we have a quantum computer here in West Palm Beach or in Palm Beach County, we might be able to work with our partners at UF up in Gainesville, and we would be on the same network essentially. So it's really about being geographically somewhat dispersed, but also having a lot of thought leadership in one location.
Mayor?
As a quick follow-up, how do we get a quantum computer in West
Stay tuned. The question was, how do we get a quantum computer in West Palm Beach? Stay tuned for that one, candidly. But I would really stress, I don't think it necessarily has to physically be here, although that would be great because IBM, who has 14 computers, quantum computers that are publicly available online, they're oversubscribed at the moment. So it's very hard if you're doing research or if you're doing development to get in line on that quantum system, right? So I think, as Kelly even pointed out, if we physically had a quantum computer or computers or systems, multiple systems here in Palm Beach County, that would greatly enhance potentially being able to grant permission or early access to those systems, or you're immediately getting into the front of the line over others, right? But it's not necessarily just limited to that. I think that because we have this access to the cloud, we will be able to have access to quantum systems here in West Palm Beach. We have it now. I mean, we could all go on our laptops and have access to that. So that's also really exciting about the quantum state of things. But it's not just computers, right? There's sensors as well. So there's microscopes that can be developed. There's research that can be done on quantum systems that are diverse in their physical nature or what their functionality can do. And having access to that here in Palm Beach County is also, definitely something that will help us get advanced and get achieved into this next realm that we're already going into. It's just if we could be the market leaders in it, and we can be the early adopters into it now and having these discussions, this is where it starts. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, I'll only add there are a couple of Quantum Industry Coalition member companies here who can certainly sell you a quantum computer that will be everything you need.